Good afternoon, everybody. We are here at our working session. It is Wednesday, July 14th. We're going to call this meeting to order. Start this meeting off with a presentation item from Public Works Department, if they're ready. Mr. Tech? Yeah, I'm going to have Michelle Ashley. She's Engineering Design Group Manager for the City of Rapid City, introduce Black and Veatch, Sean Labonde for the presentation.
So Sean Labonde has been hired, or Black and Veatch has been hired by the city to do our water master plan. And as a part of that, the TID that was approved earlier this year for Shepherd Hills had proposed relocating a booster station. And so Sean is going to present on the feasibility study that Black and Veatch has done to support the relocation of that booster station.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. The agenda that we've got prepared for a 10 to 15 minute presentation and discussion of the results is we'll review the feasibility study purpose and the approach, review the results, and then summarize the recommendations and open up for questions and discussions. So this map here is a portion of the northeast section of the city's water distribution system. And we've shown both the existing service area and then future service areas, but if, let's see if you can see, there's my mouse. The North Rapid pressure zone is up in this area to the north, and then the low level zone kind of wraps in. It's a lower elevation zone that wraps around, and then off to the east is this ridge of high elevation land that is higher and also in the North Rapid zone. So we have two portions of the North Rapid zone, one in the north and west, and then extending out to the east into the future 2045 and beyond. And the TID that we're referring to as the Shepherd Hills development is this green outline area. And it resides primarily in the North Rapid pressure zone. And so from a service standpoint then, the low-level pressure zone is provided by water from the Mountain View Water Treatment Plant. There are two reservoirs, 7 million gallon, that we refer to the Signal Hill reservoirs, and then the Elkvale Reservoir, and they provide gravity and peaking storage to the low-level zone. In the North Rapid zone then, we have the North Rapid Booster Station, which pulls water out of the low level, boosts it into the North Rapid zone, and there's one North Rapid Reservoir at 2 million gallon storage. So currently the supply that has to get over to this new portion of the North Rapid zone is supplied from the North Rapid Reservoir as well as the North Rapid Booster Station. In the 2008 master plan of the city then, there was a duplicate regional booster station and storage tank for this eastern portion of the North Rapid zone. And the purpose of our feasibility study is to say, let us relocate. Is it feasible to relocate the booster station as in the current master plan to serve the TID and the Shepherd Hills development? And so that's what we've looked at in our feasibility study. This is a larger, I guess, a closer in view of the TID and what we call the Shepherd Hills development. And the booster station location as proposed is shown here. So currently the water supply from the existing North Rapid pressure zone that I showed is through a 16-inch main and 12-inch main down into this area. And for the demands that are projected for the Shepherd Hills development, that current system is inadequate. We've talked about the initial proposal was a dedicated booster station that would serve just the Shepherd Hills development. And for our feasibility study, we're repurposing that booster station for more regional capability so that it can serve both the Shepherd Hills development, but also serve the larger North Rapid pressure zone. So it's taking on a regional role within the water distribution system rather than a development-specific booster station. Our study approach is we evaluated the system performance. When we say system performance, we talked about high pressure, low pressure, velocity in pipelines, and we use a hydraulic model, pretty sophisticated all pipes hydraulic model to gauge that performance. So we looked at the existing system in the summer of 2021 right now, where the initial Shepherd Hills development is underway and there are services that are in service there. We then took a look at build out of the Shepherd Hills development in 2025, and then we looked at a longer term future where you had this build out of Shepherd Hills plus additional North Rapid Zone development further out to the east as development would occur in the future. We did a couple of supplemental evaluations to look at some low pressure areas, and then also did a storage assessment for the North Rapid Zone. So let's go through the results pretty quickly here. The first one was the existing model system in 2021. I won't cover everything on the slide, but I'll cover the high points. And what I wanted to show, here's our booster station again, and the Shepherd Hills development in this area. And what you can see as I come down in the pipe, the little green dots are demand nodes in the hydraulic model. That's the existing development, as close as we can get it, that is already in service in the Shepherd Hills development. And it's being served from water mains, North Rapid water mains that come down Anamosa Street, cross over North Street, and in the area. And we wanted to determine through the hydraulic modeling, is the existing North Rapid Zone adequate to provide water and pressure to this current first phase of development? And the answer to that was yes. We had low pressures less than 35 psi. We really didn't find any. There were isolated locations less than 40 psi that we've seen before in the system, but otherwise, from a pressure and velocity and reservoir cycling level, for this initial phase of the Shepherd Hills development, the existing system is adequate. That was the first message, number one, that we wanted to try to answer. So the next phase then, we pulled out the full development for the Shepherd Hills development at build out. And you can see here, all of these pipes are now in the distribution system hydraulic model, and the demands are based on the developer provided demands. The new regional booster station is here, and it serves the Shepherd Hills development with a 16-inch North Rapid Zone main here. There's also a 20-inch low-level main and then a 12-inch improvement. So the water supply to the regional booster station is coming from East Anamosa Street. It comes from East Philadelphia Street, and then this 12-inch along Mickelson Drive. And I want to orient you to that cluster of supply pipes because that comes into the analysis. So we did, again, 2025 demands at full build-out. And what we found with the new regional booster station in service is that we have a small area to the west in the low-level zone that was experiencing pressures that were less than 35 psi. So from an infrastructure design criteria manual in the city, if we have pressures that drop below 35 psi, we want to try to resolve those issues. And this was the first that we determined we found that. So even though in this case the pressure that is in the Shepherd Hills development is adequate because the booster station is serving that, the suction supply of water to the booster station is causing some low pressures elsewhere in the low-level zone. And so we want to try to target that with some supplemental analysis. We then took that original build-out projection of 5 million gallons per day, that's MGD, and we said in the future there's going to be additional development out to the east in the North Rapid Zone, and we added another 3 million gallons per day of demand into the system there. And the new regional booster station, it's important to note, will have the same pumping equipment for both conditions. So what gets designed and constructed in phase one will also be adequate to accommodate additional demand as the system expands further to the east, which is a good fit for infrastructure development. We did see, again, this same area to the west of, north and west of North Street with these low pressures. And what you can think about here is the pump station supply, as you start to get more and more flow being pumped out of it, the suction piping along East Anamosa Street isn't large enough. And so it's drawing these pressures down in the low-level zone in order to supply the Shepherd Hills and the rest of the North Rapids zone. Otherwise, the system, I will note here that in the future, and think beyond 2025, this could be 2030, it could be 2035, as the demand continues to grow to the east, we went ahead and added a North Rapid Reservoir here. And so this is the second North Rapid Reservoir on the east side. It's in the master plan currently. And then we added 16-inch mains to loop the water system in North Rapid up to that reservoir. So now in the future condition, we have a North Rapid storage reservoir and we have a North Rapid booster station. Just like you have on the west side of the North Rapid zone, now you also have that on the east side of the North Rapid zone. So to get at these low-level pressures that were below 35 psi, we did some supplemental evaluations. And this is another representation of that graphic. There were two areas. Pressure area 1 was up in this area, and then pressure area 2 was a little bit to the south. And again, if you look at the main water supply to the booster station is coming up water mains that are in North Street and from East Anamosa Street down into the pump station. And because the pump station is pumping at a higher rate, then the pressures in this area start to fall off. So some potential solutions. We could upsize mains that are in Anamosa Street and North Street to get more water flow to that. But those are all roads that are paved in concrete pavement. It's expensive to do that water line replacement and upsizing. The other possibility, because these are in the high end of the low zone, we could actually rezone those. And through some valving and probably some cut-ins of new valves, you can actually turn this area of low pressure, convert it over to the North Rapids zone, and thereby increasing the pressure to do that. There's been some discussions, previous studies of the city to do that. And then third, the third bullet is what we looked at was, well, how do you get additional water supply to the booster station from the south in the low-level zone? So instead of bringing all the water supply to the booster station along Anamosa in Philadelphia, we want to get more water down here on Highway 44 and then cut it up from the south. And if we can get more water supply from the south, the head loss in the area up here would be less, and these pressures would probably reconcile themselves. So that was the analysis we did to determine how effective can we be at that. Same diagram here now, and this shows the improvements. So the improvements would be a 30-inch main that runs along Highway 44 from Campbell Street down to Mickelson Drive. And then we would run a 16-inch water main from Highway 44 up to East Anamosa along Mickelson Street. There's one important figure to note here is that our improvement is a 16-inch main. Within the TID plan, there is a baseline improvement for 12-inch along Mickelson part of the way to connect to the existing system. And in this analysis, what the results indicate is the 12-inch is inadequate to rectify pressures in the low-level pressure zone. So we want that to be a 16-inch. What was interesting then, in the detail of the results, when we just have this 12-inch main that is part of the TID, that's the only improvement in place as far as supply, new supply to the new booster station. You can see in this table we had 10 nodes that were less than 35 psi in pressure area 1 and 26 nodes. So think about that in demand nodes. 36 total with less than 35 psi. There could be 3, 4, or 5 homes connected to those that have that less than 35 psi pressure, and that's during a peak hour event. When we add the 30-inch diameter in Highway 44 and the 16-inch improvement along Mickelson, we eliminate all the low pressure nodes in area 1, and we cut the low pressure nodes to 16, almost half, in pressure area 2. So that's a pretty good improvement. We then also took a look at this 20-inch along Anamosa is a low-level main, and it's already in the proposed TID. It's included, so we did some analysis with that, and you can further reduce then the low pressure nodes in area 2 with either a 20-inch or a 12-inch. So those improvements do make a significant improvement at those low pressures. And our results summary then are a 30-inch in Highway 44, a 16-inch in Mickelson Drive. They improve the supply to the regional booster station. And then add a 20-inch Anamosa improvement to minimize the low pressure. That's already in the TID. And we're going to look at that a little more in the 2045 master plan, because you can see here, whether it's a 20-inch or a 12-inch in Anamosa, the number of pressure nodes doesn't markedly increase or decrease. So there's a possibility that could be a 12-inch rather than a 20-inch. We're going to look at that a little more in the larger context of the master plan. The other assessment that we wanted to do here was a storage assessment of water storage in the North Rapids zone. And again, back to this figure here, right now there's 2 million gallons of storage in the North Rapids zone. And so we wanted to compare that to the current demands and how that relates to the standards that the city has in the Infrastructure Design Criteria Manual, or the IDCM. And so this table here shows, just to orient everyone here, normally in water storage conditions, the American Water Works Association has manual M32 and storage allocation. And there's really 3 components to storage. There's equalization, which we call operational storage. And that's in any given day, the volume of that storage will be used in the system. There's an allowance for fire flow in case you have a large fire in the system. And then there's a third, emergency storage. And so the criteria for the city in the IDCM storage is the equalization, or the operational storage, is 25% of the max day demand. We have a 4,000 gallon per minute fire flow for 4 hours, which is a large facility commercial fire. And then emergency storage is 100% of average day demand. And the cities, so we looked at, in the existing system right now, these storage components add up to a required storage of 2.3 million gallons. And in the North Rapids zone, if you remember the diagram, we only have a 2 million gallon storage reservoir. So currently, for the IDCM standards, the North Rapids zone is deficient on storage. That's how it's less than what the criteria would require. That's exacerbated when we add the Shepherd Hills development. So that adds 5 MGD of demand by 2025, and the storage requirement increases up to 4 million gallons of additional storage required. And then if you add the 3 MGD out into the future, that storage volume then increases to 6.3 million gallons. And so the recommendation of our feasibility study, in addition to constructing the North Rapid booster station, there should be an additional storage component added on the east side of the North Rapid zone. And that can be 4 million gallons initially to start, or it could be phased. So let's build 2 million gallons initially, watch where development occurs in the North Rapid zone, and then you can always add an additional 2 million gallons in the future at the right location. So just to summarize then our recommendations out of this, the regional booster station implementation is recommended to serve the Shepherd Hills development and other North Rapid pressure zone needs. So it's a regional facility now that has a larger function in the water distribution system rather than just the Shepherd Hills development. Its location is shown here near East Philadelphia Street and Anamosa Street. Everything looks good from a hydraulic modeling standpoint. We'll be able to provide pressure into the Shepherd Hills development. We also recommend the storage expansion in the North Rapids zone. So either a 4 million gallon elevated storage on Elkvale Road, or phased into 2 components, 2 million gallons initially. Let's watch what the development does over the coming years, and we can add 2 million gallons in the future. And I've listed then the pump criteria that we would use for initiating preliminary design for the facility. See, I went the wrong way. On the distribution piping side then, there are a series of pipe improvements that are within the TID. We have basically a 20-inch low-level main that is from North Street to the booster station, from the booster station to Mickelson, and then along Anamosa Street all the way out to Concourse Drive, at which point it reconnects into the low-level zone. That's items 1, 2, and 3. Item 4 is the North Rapid Pump Station discharge. So it's a high pressure. It's a 16-inch that runs along Anamosa and supplies water into the Shepherd Hills development. The additional distribution system improvements then were those offsite improvements that we talked about. It's from Campbell to Mickelson, a parallel 30-inch main, and then from Highway 44 up to Anamosa, a 16-inch main. And then we also, along with the tank, have looped a 16-inch main to supply water into, again, that further North Rapid zone. So improvements in terms of the booster station, we recommend adding storage for the North Rapid zone, and then a series of distribution system improvements to supply water into this area. So I want to open up then for questions and discussions that anyone might have regarding the feasibility study.
I do have a couple people in the queue. Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that in future maps that you do more identification of the streets, especially where the pressure concern area where you have those circles. I'm not that familiar with the area you're talking about, so I'd really like to have more streets identified. If I know this is a master plan or feasibility study, do you know anything about when you put in these new pipes, is there a lot of road distribution or, excuse me, disruption? Could somebody answer?
Yeah, if you're putting a new pipe in an existing road, there would be disruption to the traffic during construction. And generally, what we found contractors able to do is they don't shut down the street, but it's a detour, or instead of having 4 lanes of traffic, you go 2 lanes of traffic going both ways.
I get it. But we have had some concerns lately from our constituents about that disruption, and we never know about it in advance, really. We don't have those plans in front of us, so I'd like to see some of that. And could you define the emergency water supply? What is that used for?
When we're designing water systems and components, we don't like to design the facilities right on the edge. So what you think about in terms of let me have a max day demand condition, you're going to use the top half of that operational storage. And if there's something that goes wrong with your treatment plant or a couple of your groundwater wells, you may not be able to replenish that operational storage overnight. And so the emergency storage allows you to have a second day of that or a third day of that. The other situation that we've talked about is you might have a max day demand and you use your operational storage. Right at the end of that, you have a fire.
Okay.
And then you have another 1 million gallons that comes out of that emergency storage allocation. And so that is used for basically unplanned events that cannot be planned for adequately. It gives you a safety factor in operating the water supply system, so you never should lose service of water.
Okay, and lastly, you keep referring to within the TID. Why is that important to you?
Well, that was the focus of our feasibility study, was to supply water to the demands that were within the TID. And what we found, that there were improvements that were also needed that were outside of the TID. And so the differentiation is there's the development, and the Shepherd Hills development itself is causing us to require other improvements that are outside of the TID.
Okay, that is it for me. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Laura Armstrong.
Thank you. I also have some questions. Clarification, what were the peak hours that you were referring to?
So in any given day, if I have a level of maximum day, which was 5 MGD for Shepherd Hills, you'll have periods of time where the demands are actually lower than that 5 MGD, And then there are peak hour times where the demands go higher than that max day. So that's called the diurnal curve.
Okay.
Generally in the midnight range to 4 a.m. range in the summertime, people are turning irrigation systems on and they're watering.
Okay.
And we find the peak hours are occurring in the middle of the night in Rapid City.
Interesting.
Then there'll be a late morning time period where that demand falls below the max day.
Okay.
But on average, in a given maximum day, 5 MGD is the average flow over that time.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. And then could you define the terminology of nodes?
Demand nodes in the hydraulic model, which were the little red dots. That's how we allocate demands into the hydraulic model. So every house or every water service in the city has a meter associated with it, and we have those meters that are shown geographically in relation to the hydraulic model. What we have to do is get the demands from the meters into the hydraulic model. And so we may have 4 or 5 meter services that are picked and allocated to the closest demand node. So it's a way of getting all of your meters and demands into the hydraulic model.
Okay.
That make sense?
That does make sense,
Okay.
so thanks for dumbing it down so I can understand.
I have to think about
I
it,
don't
too.
pretend to be an engineer
Yeah.
by any measure. So I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Pat Jones?
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Armstrong, I had the same question about what nodes were, so I looked it up while we were during the presentation. It said anywhere, any point of intersection where water lines connect for redistribution. That's what my friend Google told me. Is that close to right?
It's close to right.
Okay.
And then we will bring demands from 4 or 5 nearby services to that node. And then the pipes, you know, you think about the adjoining pipes have so much flow in gallons per minute flowing through the pipes.
Okay, so thank you, sir. Then my next question, you mentioned about storage and perhaps could start with 2 million and then add more later. Did I hear you say that correctly?
Correct.
Can you ever have too much storage for water?
You can, absolutely. And that shows up when you start to have low chlorine residuals in the wintertime.
So that's why it'd be best to go with the 2 million and then see if we need it rather than more in the beginning?
Absolutely, because you can start to have some water quality and taste and odor issues if you have too much storage.
Okay, very
other-
good to know. I would have had no idea on that,
Yeah.
so thank you for clearing that up. Next thing, this is addressing a very specific certain area. I've been told by some contractors, some street people, some just lots of people down the line that water projects drive street repair, or the need for street repair drives water projects. Is there any truth to that with this issue, or is this water projects that are needing to be done, and we would do the streets as needed then if water lines are put in?
Well, I think the water projects are needed to support the development that is occurring.
And this is to support both current parts of North Rapid and that new area to the east, which will most likely be developed eventually. I think it's inevitable.
Yes.
So this is planning for that, as well as, because my friend Councilman Evans always talks to us about, you know, we need to be prepared for development and being ready to go and not waiting to catch up when developers come forward. So I kind of see this as perhaps us doing that, of all things. So this would allow for more development in that area?
I agree with that, because the regional booster, in the presentation, we've set the regional booster station to accommodate both the Shepherd Hills development plus the future development within the same pump footprint. So the facility you build now is going to be adequate well into the future. And then the second part of that is that the elevated storage tank will allow you to feed that peak hour water further to the east as a development. And you're not continuously trying to catch up with the development. You're in a position where you can serve the existing development now and then be better prepared to accommodate future development as it occurs.
And I think that puts us in a terrific place
Yeah,
where we may not
absolutely.
be at this time. Very good. Thank you, sir. I yield.
Bill Evans?
Thank you. These plans all address solving the problem with current water sources and basically providing more pipelines to get that same source of water to where they need to be, correct?
That's correct.
Have we thought about, and some of us have been thinking about, well, we're running out of water, we need additional sources. Perhaps one of those sources might be Rapid Valley, a co-op with them. Maybe our infrastructure should be thinking more toward supplying this area and areas further to the east with infrastructure rather than kind of put a patch over what we have now. Instead, plan on implementing new sources, maybe that come from the east, and feed it that way rather than from the south with the same sources, because it seems to me that is sort of a patch that will solve the problem for a few years, but it's not going to solve the problem for 25 years. That's my first impression of this. Have we had that kind of a perhaps idea floated around at all to investigate that the infrastructure be spent on something, bringing in new sources from the east instead of just trying to resupply from the same sources?
So you're correct. This is a near-term item to address that development that is kicking off right now. In the larger context of our master plan, we are looking at a 2045 scenario that relocates the Mountain View water treatment plant from its current location to a location further east that is more centrally located in this area. It's still using Rapid Creek water, though. We're at this point, our initial indications is that there is enough water supply through Pactola Reservoir and Rapid Creek to provide the city water well into the future. And that's 2045 as well as 2115 in terms of the demand numbers we're looking at. So you supplement that Rapid Creek water with groundwater, and right now we're not looking at any other sources to supplement the existing sources.
Well, I think before we approve money to spend doing this patch, which is kind of what it is, we perhaps look at a slightly longer term solution and the money be spent to prepare for what's coming in the future. And I think it is based upon population projections and everything. So we need to have further discussion about this. Thank you.
Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to assume anything, but this booster station on TID 86, is that 84, is that being paid for by the developer? Is that what we talked about? Might have to be answered by the public. So so we designed it as a regional, like, if I remember that conversation.
I believe for TID 86, or whatever the TID number was, yeah, the developer proposed to construct a booster station. The purpose of this feasibility study is to determine what portion of it is regional in nature. So there is funding available in the TID to construct a booster station. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's enough funding in that TIF to build a complete regional booster station as we've identified.
So that's something we might have to identify before we get halfway through it or something.
Well, certainly there'll be, when we work with the developer, we'll identify a share of who's paying for what.
Because my other concern was the 12-inch coming down Mickelson that's going to be insufficient. And if they've already, I don't think they've started building that 12-inch, but probably have to make sure we're going to have funding for that 16-inch and then the 30-inch coming up Camel to provide for the future, I think, as some of these guys mentioned. So, because those weren't included in that TIF. Part of the 12-inch was, but not the 16-inch and only part way down. So,
that's
okay.
correct, and that's the reason we did this feasibility study, is to determine what the impacts to the entire system
Makes
are.
sense then. Okay. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit of background for me is that, let me back up a little bit. On the background for you folks, I've had an opportunity to listen into a webinar. You folks are pretty much national, or is it international?
My company, Black & Veatch?
Yes, Black & Veatch.
We are international, and then again, nationally across the United States for both coasts and here in the interior. I'm from Denver.
Okay.
I live in Denver.
I was really impressed with the personnel that was on the webinar, so I wanted to applaud your company for that webinar as well as this presentation here today. The question I've got for you is, I understand the TID district and all the questions that have been brought up about this TID area, and but I was wondering if you had an opportunity to look at, in my particular area of interest is the east side of Elkvale. You've got a couple of diagrams up there for future reservoirs, and I was just wondering if you could expound on that just a little bit, just give me a brief on that.
Well, the existing low-level Elkvale Reservoir is there.
Yes.
And my understanding is there's been an allocation of land for this new North Rapid Elkvale Reservoir in the same vicinity, so that they're close together, and the operations staff then has one site to visit for both reservoirs. Beyond that, we really haven't looked at anything more than that. The existing Elkvale Reservoir is ground set. The new North Rapid will be an elevated tank, so it'll be higher in the air.
Just the periphery or the environs of the TID district is what you looked at?
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Because I was interested in if you had an opportunity to look at what we are allocating for Ellsworth as well. So that answers my question on that part of it. Yep. And then
I might note within the hydraulic model, we do have Ellsworth Air Force Base demands plugged into the hydraulic model.
Oh, you do?
We do. Yes.
Okay. I think that'll be beneficial information. And then when you were talking about the water from Rapid Creek, were you considering the wells as well as, the wells of Rapid City?
We do, yeah. So we had a number of the wells that are in existence today operational during the hydraulic modeling. So the water supply situation in the hydraulic modeling currently is you're using both groundwater and surface water to meet demands, and we've continued with that approach. A balanced approach is really what we're talking about, groundwater and surface water in this hydraulic modeling.
Very good. And then I think that's the basic information that I need at this point. But I think this is a very worthwhile study to get us started on this TID area right now, whichever number it is. But I remember the conversations through the TIF committee meetings, and I know we were trying to come up with where should this be located at. So you've been very helpful in that area. Thank you very much. I yield.
Seeing no other questions, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Item 1 through 5, Pauline.
Number 1 is an assessment appeal from Nikki Kuchenbecker, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. As I put in my memo that's attached to the agenda, this is no surprise. This is the property that was previously owned by Gordon Howie, and during the middle of the process, the ownership changed hands, so we started the process over with the new owner. Nikki had reached out to us saying that she would like to appeal this. I've also been contacted by Brendan Casey, who has a financial interest in it because he is the one financing the property. As I've said before, the assessment actually goes with the property and not the individual. That's how it gets assessed. It ends up on the tax rolls, much like unpaid property taxes. It needs to be paid. Eventually, it will end up there. When I responded to Mr. Casey's questions, one of the things that I pointed out, and I'd like to reiterate here, is that it is that homeowner's responsibility to disclose this. I happened to pull up the disclosure online for 2021 for a residential property, and number 3 on the very first page says, "Are you aware of any unrecorded liens or assessments against the property?" And this is where that would fall. So in my opinion, it's a matter between the previous owner and the current owner. They need to work it out. The city has spent the money. It should not be on the taxpayers to foot that bill. And so my recommendation come Monday night would be to deny the appeal. Mr. Casey said he was not able to come to the meeting today, but that he would be at the meeting on Monday. So just so you guys are aware of that. Number 2, that is standard for work comp purposes. Number 3, those are for mowing and debris removal. There's 4 properties on that resolution this time. Number 4 is our sales tax through the month of May. We are up 23.36% over the same time period last year. That equates to about $2.5 million in the general fund. Very much better than what we had budgeted for. I believe we budgeted for around 2% increase over 2019 numbers. So that will be interesting to see how we end up at the end of the year. Number 5, this is our annual time to come before you with a memo on malt beverage licenses that are eligible for lottery. We have an ordinance that we allocate those licenses based on population. So for every 843 people in our population estimate or census, they can have 1 license. Currently, we could have 92 licenses, which would be 23 more than we have now. We have 69 malt beverage with video licenses issued. 65 of those are active, 4 continue to remain inactive. This is also usually the time when you guys would decide if you want to leave it as is, if you want to open up more licenses, that type of thing. I will tell you the 4 inactive licenses, the conversations that the owner has with Heidi in my office, he has indicated that he would like to be using them, but he can't find locations for them. So that's about all I know on that. You obviously don't have to make a decision today. Then down below, I believe it's maybe number 18 is the last item on the agenda. It talks about petty cash funds and change funds. We are increasing change funds for the swimming pools and decreasing change funds for the library. The library didn't use it. Obviously, the swimming pools are open now, and they need to get their change funds back to an operating level.
Jason Solomon, you had some questions?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Pauline, with the performance, you're pretty satisfied with how we're doing from May last year to May this year, I imagine, huh?
Yes, it's nice to see that we're up double digits. That increase will probably level out as the year goes on, because this is part of the time where COVID, we had businesses shut down in May last year because they were operating on a very small scale, doing to-go orders and curbside pickup and that type of thing. So I do expect that it will start, the overall increase will start decreasing some.
Well, this past year and a half have been very tough. And this past week, we all received a request from both our police and fire chief regarding COVID hazard duty pay. And this would be a one-time bonus for those who are on the front lines during all of this. I think we have an opportunity here, given our sales tax revenue. And Pauline, could you kind of give us the figure? I asked you for it, but would you mind sharing with the rest of the council what that kind of dollar amount would look like? I think you said about $309,000, but at least for the first responders.
For first responders, and it's all in, which would mean it includes the FICA, Medicare, it would be $309,128 estimate. That's the maximum, because if anybody has left the fire or police department since we ran these numbers, because they would have to be a current, what was proposed is they would have to still be a current employee and worked last year. 309,000 for the police and fire.
So my request for Monday night's council meeting is that we place this on the agenda, or if it can't be done for Monday night, at least the following agenda, for us to actually make right on this. I think this is an opportunity for the leaders of the city to tell the first responders in our police and fire department that we have your backs. thank you for all that you've done. We know what you've had to put up with, not only risking your own health and own safety, but ensuring that we remain a great place to live. And in a time where it's very difficult to serve on the front lines, I at least want Rapid City to be known as a place that takes care of our first responders, especially those in police and fire. So if I could make that request to our council leadership and to whomever, whatever the right process would be, I would 100% support that. I think $309,000 is a small price to pay to say thank you and well done to our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. I'll work on getting that on an agenda for us. Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to respond to that, but I will. But I have a tendency to agree with Alderman Solomon there. I think that the COVID funds that were put forward that was some of the reason that we got the $20 million in the first place, was to help cover some of that. But our sales tax covered it. We used it, and now it's sitting there. I think this would be appropriate. I'm not sure how we get it on the agenda. I would agree with that. But the other reason I chimed in was I think it might be a good time for our city attorney to explain to us how an assessment works, like a mechanic's lien, or I think there's a different process for this type of assessment, that why it sticks to the property. So we'll have a better understanding Monday. So I would request that Mr. Landine explain
Landine, if you would, please.
How this works, because basically what happens is somebody buys a property in between. It doesn't show up on a title work or whatever, but I think there's still a priority somewhere that this thing can attach to the property.
I would have to look at that more. I'm not comfortable giving an answer right now until I look into it a little more. So I can look into it and provide you something prior to Monday night.
That'd be good to understand for Monday night, because basically what happens is the work's done, the property's either foreclosed or whatever, or being sold, and then whether or not there's a discussion on disclosures or not, we don't really typically want to get into a personal civil suit type thing, but we do need to understand if we have the authority to attach to that property, then how does that work? I mean, if it's not attached to the property and then someone else buys the property, can you attach after that? I guess that's the questions I'm looking for, so, because I've run into these same things, so thank you.
Mr. Jones, question for Pauline.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, comparing May 21 to May 2020 is exciting, and it's great to see things coming back. I would be interested in knowing May 2021 compared to May 2019, what kind of a difference we had. Pauline.
In total or just general fund?
Just the increase, like you talked about, the 23.36%.
So I can give you a dollar amount. Well, I'll do the formula
sure.
quick. The dollar amount of 2021 in total over 2019 is 1.1 million, roughly. Increase
okay.
over 2019.
Thank you.
And let me give you a percentage here. Which is, that's not the right one. Extra zero. About a 21% increase. Just
21% increase.
May of 2021 over just the month of May,
right,
over the month of May in 2019.
So that makes those numbers, I think, even more realistic. We all know the COVID year was down, but seeing a 21% increase comparing May 2019 to May 2021, I think is very exciting. And I would concur, I would very much agree with my colleague to the right about the pay for our public safety folks. Couldn't agree more, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. My other question was, the 843 people equals one lottery license. Is that a state law, or is that a Rapid City thing, or how is that determined?
That is a city ordinance.
City ordinance. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Nordstrom, some questions for Pauline?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have the council consider, instead of using the word bonus, consider using the word hazard pay. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because in the rescue plan is that there is language that provides for and revenue that is provided for hazard pay. And if we could, and I don't need an answer from Pauline today, but if she could have the opportunity to look that up on the American Rescue Plan, to see what that could be allowed for so that we could use the undesignated cash for my favorite one, fixing potholes, because I support the idea of getting the frontline people hazard pay instead of bonuses. And I think the language is a little bit, and I will yield to Pauline if she's got a better suggestion on that, but at the little bit that I've been able to read on the rescue plan, there is provisions for hazard pay or premium pay within that act.
I do know Mr. Nordstrom is correct in that, the details of which it's been a long time since I've looked at. What I recall, it was supposed to be like an hourly rate difference during the COVID time. I would have to double check to see if this is something that we could do with that, but.
And we can discuss that when we have an item on the agenda?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Pauline.
If I may add on, if I recall correctly, Pauline, it's up to $13 an hour that they can receive. So, but I will yield to your expertise. So, thank you.
Anything else, Pauline? Public Works, Mr. Tech.
Good afternoon. We have items 6 through 14 for Public Works. Item number 6 is just...
Ben, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Items number 6 through 14 for Public Works. Start with number 6, acknowledging the findings of the feasibility study for tax increment district number 84, the booster pump station on the presentation. Can you hear me now? There we go. Thank you. Items number 6 through 14 are for Public Works. We'll start with number 6, acknowledging the findings for the feasibility study for the tax increment district number 84, the presentation that was just given. This is just acknowledging the findings and allocating staff resources to prepare an agreement with the developer identifying the terms of the booster pump station, relocation, design, and construction, and investigating funding sources for additional infrastructure needed to support regional development in the Shepherd Hills area. Number 7 is approving change order 1F to J&J Asphalt for City Springs Lane Overlay Project. It's a decrease of $2,450. That's the final change order for this project, and closing everything out now. Number 8 is approve change order 1 to Dakota Barricade Lane Line Painting Project. This is a no-cost change order to adjust the interim deadline. Number 9 is authorizing mayor and finance officer to sign amendment number 1 to South Dakota Department of Transportation agreement to authorize expenditures for replacement or rehabilitation of bridges that do not appear on the original Exhibit A to the agreement. This is provided that the state's Office of Administration has confirmed to the city in writing that the subject bridges are classified in poor condition and to extend the expiration to funds until December 31st, 2025. Item number 10 is authorizing mayor and finance director to sign an amendment to the original agreement between the City of Rapid and Long Branch Civil Engineering, Inc. for professional engineering services for Robbinsdale Phase 6 design. It's in the amount of $9,220. This is going to be for property acquisition for Phase 6C, I believe. Right? Number 11 is authorizing mayor and finance officer to assign amendment number 3 with FMG Engineering for Elkvale Reservoir water level investigation, project number 51238, in the amount of $13,745. This is just extending our study on this and authorizing those expenditures for that study. Item number 12 is authorizing staff to advertise bids for pavement rehab project on West Louise Street, project number 202625. Estimated cost is $315,000. And item number 13 is authorizing staff to advertise for the East Main Street North Bridge repair, project number 192525, for $1.3 million. This is for by the fairgrounds, I believe. And Dale, I'm not sure about 14. Okay.
Item 14 is a project for our enterprise funds. So We did something similar with our water and solid waste, and this project is a combination for water and water reclamation. So there's one project in there to do electrical upgrades for one of our booster stations. I believe it's the Robbinsdale Booster Station, and then I believe there's 6 projects out of our water reclamation facility that are large maintenance projects that need to be done to keep the old wastewater treatment plant chugging along. So that's the purpose of that project. And then I would like to bring to your attention, we received notice from the DOT just 2 days ago of an additional grant window for bridge repair, and it's got a very short deadline on it. We have to have that to them by August 1st. So the only way for us to get your approval to do that is Monday night at the council meeting. We'll have an agenda item to request authorization for the mayor to sign a grant request to the DOT for bridge repair. And I believe what we are targeting is the Chapel Lane Bridge. We'll be looking at preliminary engineering on that for a future rehab project. So I just wanted to give you advance notice for Monday night that there will be an additional item on non-consent for that particular grant.
And I do have some questions here for you gentlemen. Darla Drew?
Thank you, Mr. President. On item 13, we've got a project there for over $1 million. That is in the CIP. Is that money that's already been infused into the CIP?
As part of our bridge replacement program with the DOT, we're eligible for state funding, so it's typically an 80-20 match. Okay. And typically they cap the amount, so we'll receive reimbursement from the state for a good majority of that $1.3 million, but there will be matching funds that we have set aside in our CIP. We identify bridge replacements and repairs in our CIP, and I think annually. So I hope that answers your question, but yes, we do have money set aside in our CIP for bridge repairs.
Well, I'm a fan. I really like that idea, but I sit on the CIP committee, and I'm just wondering, we're to approve this before the money is in?
Well, yeah, the money's allocated, so we've got our money in the bank. That's not a problem.
Okay.
The bridge program has been in existence for decades, so that's not a problem either as far as the funding is concerned. We've got the funding approved for this project, or allocated,
okay.
I should say, or set aside.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura Armstrong?
Thank you. I'm assuming if this is going to be placed on the agenda for Monday, you'll get the details to us regarding this grant. Approximately how much money are we talking about, and will there be any matching funds?
I believe it's $100,000, and once again, the $100,000.
Sorry.
And the grant application, all that information will be attached to the agenda for your review.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mr. President. On item number 9, I'm just kind of reviewing that one more time. That's a DOT agreement. Does that involve the big grants as well?
It is, and so we applied for a big grant, and I believe this is for San Marco Bridge. So this particular project, the state is doing all the design work for the structure. Well, they sent agreements to us to sign saying that all this work will be done by a certain date. Well, guess what? The DOT hasn't lived up to their date, so they recognize that. And then that's why this amendment is on there, to extend those dates so they can get their work done, so we can go ahead and get that bridge repaired.
This isn't the first time something like this has happened.
That's correct. Yeah.
The other question I had on that was, it's gone. Oh, yes, the poor conditions of these bridges. Is that I'm not sure if I'm asking this question in the correct way, but does that involve some of the bridges that we had a presentation on just a couple
Absolutely.
meetings
In
ago?
fact, I was just going to bring that up, that we had a gentleman from Bros Engineering that was here, required to give you an annual update on our bridge, and he identified, I think, 3 structures, all of
Yes.
which we had plans to make repairs on, so
This takes care of that,
Yes.
covers most of that, yeah.
that's correct.
Thank you. I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dale, so just you obviously got our attention with the grant, and being that the Chapel Valley is in my ward, some questions I'll have about that. I don't expect you have this. Are we considering widening that at all? And 2, what would be the secondary access while it's being worked on?
Yeah, any bridge rehab will require some sort of lane restrictions. It's no different than when we did 12th Street over here. And then a number of years ago, there was work done on Chapel Lane, and there may be a temporary signal to allow head-to-head, or not head-to-head, but one-way traffic. But there will be a plan to get in and out of there for sure. There's no way that we can close that structure. There will be a plan in place to maintain traffic.
Problem with the one-way access that's also a bridge is if you have flooding or fire or, you know, all the other things we've talked about, that's something obviously we need to continue to explore in that neighborhood. 2, and this is just general to every time that we receive grants, whether it's from the state or the federal government, it'd be great to know what those conditions are, what strings are attached to that. So obviously this will be used for bridges, but if there's any other information that we would need to know, perhaps you can make that available.
Yeah, let me, I guess, summarize the state bridge program. That's all state funding that we receive, so there aren't federal hoops and requirements. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward grant dollars. There aren't, well, you got to do this over here if you want money. It's straightforward. It's, we're working on this bridge. Here's how much you're eligible for. That's it. So
Okay.
that's one of the beautiful things about some of these DOT agreements is they're not bogged down with bureaucratic red tape on a federal level.
Yeah, well, I asked that question to Chief Hedrick when he talks about a grant. I want to make sure I fair treatment to others as well, and I'd just like to make that a habit. Anytime we accept any grants or funds from any other entity, that we make sure we are all very clear about what we're signing up for. Thank you for the update. I yield.
Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. President. On item number 6, we're having an open line of communication with the developer.
Yes, we forwarded the findings of the study to Mr. Chaffee. I know Michelle has reached out and visited with him. I fully expected him to be here today, but he didn't show up. So we haven't received any concerns or comments from him. So, yeah, certainly an open line. And part of what we're requesting is for us to sit down and negotiate, you know, who's paying for what and who's doing what on some of these improvements.
I want to digress for a second, Mr. President, on the, I'll go back to the, acknowledge the report on retail on-off sale malt beverage licenses. I know we're just acknowledging a report, but I know that there was constituents in here that wanted to have a discussion or see if there was going to be a discussion on opening up, you know, any of those 23 licenses that are available. So I don't know if anybody has questions, and I don't know who we would direct those to find the history on why we haven't opened up those licenses if they're available, or some, I guess, I don't know who we would, I guess it would be just up to us, huh? Whether we do that or not, or have the conversation about it on
Landine, can
Monday
you
night.
answer Mr. Weifenbach's question?
Well, I would prefer Pauline. She generally finance decides. My recollection as far as the video lottery is that there's generally a perception that we have sufficient casinos in town and that there hasn't been a desire to open it up. But I mean, I think it is probably more of a policy question for the council than a question for staff. But I know Pauline is primarily, over the years I've been here, finance has been the primary on that.
Okay. Well, I noticed they left, but I just thought if they were pursuing the licenses, there's an application and that stuff to go through the process that, I mean, maybe we should have that
Understanding
discussion.
as well, Pauline did have to leave for another obligation. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Darla Drew?
Oh, no, that's a mistake. I don't have any questions. I'm done.
On to community development. Michelle, Vicky had another obligation to go to, so you're taking over.
Thank you, Mr. President. Number 15 is requesting approval of the amended FY21 Annual Action Plan, the CDBG Annual Action Plan. HUD has informed us that we will be receiving an additional $7,921 in allocated funds. What we would plan to do is move that money as well as the unallocated funds to the Affordable Housing Contingency Fund and then award those funds through a competitive application.
Thank you, Darla Drew. Hanging out, okay. And you're back in there again. Guess no questions for you, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16, Joel, is that something you can elaborate on? Jim shook his head no. And I can't provide any insight to it either.
I mean, I looked at the item, it's just to add, I think, an additional camera, but I couldn't tell you where it is, so.
Probably for the best we don't say where it is.
I believe this would be phase 1 of the reconstruction here. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I can get an answer for you on that, but I'm Convergent is the technology company that was hired to do the cameras and the door stops. And I believe we added 2 door stops, so that would be in line with that amount, but I'll get that answer from Davis, our building manager.
Thank you, Jim. And item 17, standard business, and Pauline did 18. We had public comment from Mr. Winia.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm here to speak on the eligible video lottery licenses that haven't been released in 20 years. I've been in the business for almost 30 years and have purchased several lottery licenses. There's only, as Pauline was alluding to, there's only 4 lottery licenses and available, and they are inactive. One person owns these licenses. They are not for sale. There's 23 that are available by population. I believe that, I'm doing a project out on Timmins Boulevard, and I believe if someone comes to the council in July when you review these and has a legitimate ask for some of these 23 licenses to be released, I think it should at least be considered. And like I say, there hasn't been any released for at least 20 years that I know of. So, I'm spending $1 million plus out there on Timmins on my project, and I'll be renting to 4 or 5 businesses, and that's what I do. I build a building, put a casino in it in an area that's been approved by the council, and I'll be renting to 4 or 5 businesses. They will in turn, of course, be collecting sales tax along with myself paying 50% lottery tax to the state, and I can't find any lottery licenses that are available. I won't start construction until I have the 2 lottery licenses. That's a business I'm in, and so I believe now this ordinance that Mayor McLaughlin signed, or amendment to the ordinance, it's 25 years old, 26 years old. I believe that should be changed. I believe that these locations that are approved by the council, they should be eligible for a lottery license to be released to these locations. If there's nothing available, I believe they should be released to these locations that have been approved by the city council. You know, right now, the way it stands, you know, it's, like I say, there's nothing available, and there's also there could be a huge benefit to the city on releasing these licenses. You know, the city could easily charge a $10,000 to $20,000 fee, one-time fee, when these lottery licenses are released. And anybody serious about being in the business would have no problem paying that. So, and I do not believe that all 23 licenses should be released at one time. I think it should be on a yearly basis when you guys meet for this yearly, you know, this yearly review. And I think that's you guys' job to review these every year when they come up. If somebody's sitting there has been waiting months or even a year for a lottery license, there's nothing available, nothing to buy, I think this ordinance should be changed, that you guys can address that and, you know, release the number you want and charge a fee for them. And, you know, that this ordinance is way outdated, this 25-year-old ordinance that Mayor Ed McLaughlin signed at that time. So I just wanted to give my input on that, and you know, I've been here 28 years operating these, and I'll probably be here a little longer, Lord willing. So I think it's something to consider for Monday night's council meeting, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Winiat. Laura, you wanted to make an announcement, and Mr. Jones, you wanted to make one?
Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to remind everybody or inform everybody that our rapid transit system is updating our transit plan, and I want to commend that department for setting up a booth tomorrow evening at 5:30 on the corner of Main Street and 6th during summer nights. People say, oh, I didn't hear we were doing this, or we were never involved. If you are downtown tomorrow evening, please stop by the booth, give your input, see what they're doing. You can get a copy of the proposed plan, and obviously a more informed constituent is a better constituent. So thank you.
Pat Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our outgoing board president, Laura Armstrong, for the work that you did in leading us through some very tough times. You and Vice President Lehman, now President Lehman. Thank you very much for all you did. You were extremely helpful to me and to many others behind the scenes, and your dedication and loyalty and service to the city is nothing short of amazing. So I want to thank you for what you did, and proud to have you as a member on our council. Thank you very much. And to our new officers, best of luck to you. Look forward to serving under you, or beside you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Something.